It's my feel-good breakfast show.
We are continuing a very, very important conversation, especially for our matriculants who have just passed and maybe not gotten the results that they were wanting, and for their parents. We are joined in studio by education specialist Atalisha Halal, who is giving hope to the matriculants that did not gain acceptance into university or did not attain the now, I'm going to say, infamous bachelor's pass, because we've spoken so much about it. But what are those alternative routes to success? We are continuing that conversation with Atalisha right now. What are the numbers like? Is there an unreal expectation placed on learners that everyone's going to make it through to university? What are the actual pass rates like in terms of getting that back?
So if we look at it in 2020, around 76.2% of matriculants who attempted passed. And of that 76.2%, 36.4% actually achieved bachelor's passes. But I think what's more important than the numbers is that each number represents a student and then their aspirations, and it's a human being with their dreams and their aspirations. And what is happening now is our need for tertiary education is far outgrowing the ability of the public education sphere to provide it. And I think for us in private higher education, we want to take hands with the public sphere and say there's hundreds and thousands of qualifying students who don't find spaces, and we want to be able to widen access, throw open the doors to them and say, this is your chance, this is your space, come and learn. And that is key. Activate them,
because we talk so much about the potential of the future workforce.
Yes.
Now, more important, we've got more young people in South Africa than we've ever had.
Before.
So we need to activate that potential, and maybe private is the way to go. What is essentially, I know you've touched on it, but the difference between the government and the private when it comes to tertiary? What would you say?
They have older buildings. It is essentially, as I said before, we follow the same stringent quality processes. They employ some of the best academic minds in the field, as do we. Research is a key component for them. We also conduct research. So there's not much of a difference materially, except for government funding versus no government funding.
COVID-19 is still here. It hasn't left us just yet. We are likely to see a third wave at some point. Is distance learning a part of, how do you see that kind of remote learning slotting in within the private sphere? How have you been able to deal with that in the past, and how are you envisioning the rest of this year and the foreseeable future playing out?
Well, I think distance learning will be key in the future. All the trend predictors in education tell us that distance learning, this is the year for distance learning. So people managing their anxieties around their comorbidities can access distance learning. And for us, we were able to pivot quite fluidly when the change happened, because we have so much of online platforms, chat groups, access to...
kind of future-proofed already.
We were a little future-proofed already, but I think South Africa presents a unique challenge, because not only do you need to be available for online learning, you need to facilitate those who don't have access to those platforms. So it meant things like very quickly getting data deals in for students, assisting them by having Wi-Fi access provided in learning centers remotely. So there's a lot of different conversations happening, but I think distance learning is going to be key for people who want to engage in their studies whilst keeping themselves safe, or perhaps their caregivers to older grandparents who they're also concerned about. So distance learning will become key to learner success over the next few months.
And we've seen that within business, certainly within our sphere, within entertainment. Maybe it opens up new avenues to connect with a bigger audience, with a bigger network, and maybe that's something that all organizations need to be thinking about. How about zero rated data? There's an idea, just putting it out there to the networks. Maybe we can round off now with some final advice, someone who gets to live through the positive side of learners going into this private space, as opposed to going what they might have thought was the be-all and the end-all of their future, which it isn't. It's important, but it's not. It doesn't define you. What advice do you have for those matriculants that are grappling with that right now?
I think three main things. Number one, as I always say every time, matric is the start of your story. It's not the end of your story. So it's critical that they jump in and use the resilience they learned from surviving this matric through the pandemic to reimagine their tertiary education. Go that extra mile, do the higher certificate, still access your degree studies. Recognize that tertiary education is critical for graduate employability, but it is not the most important marker of your success. Your mindset and your resilience is what will see you through.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, we've dealt with so many experts. Just that first encounter that you have with your new employer will define that. So whether you've got a university degree or not, being able to work through those challenges is absolutely important. I'm going to suggest that as many of you as you can, whether you are locked down in what your future should be or still asking those questions, go to www.stadio, that's stadio.co.za. Have a look. Maybe, just maybe, a new future, the future that was meant for you, is out there waiting. You've been awesome. Thank you so much. You've got me feeling a lot more confident, so hopefully that's helped you guys feel a lot more confident about your future as well.